It's not Monday, it's Thursday, May 5th. Just finished listening to a half-hour interview podcast with Michael Tsarion, which is brilliant. The entirety is his response to one question regarding possible connection between religion and our adherence to a father figure, and he goes off on quite the dissertation. It's beautiful. The very, very end takeaway idea is what launched this video, and I'll let you go listen to the interview on your own time. I'll put the link in the show notes. And one of the overarching contextual ideas of the response had to do with understanding that religion, or in this case theology, is born out of and continues to subsist via psychology, or that theology really is psychology kind of twisted in its own way, not the least of which in how the priest class that was born out of the post-cataclysmic world to act as an intermediary in order to explain what it was that had existed or transpired, the cataclysms referring to the comets. So now here's the priest class to come in after all the fear and terror in order to assuage the emotional stability of the people that are left, and they're going to set themselves up as that intermediary between the forces that were out there, cataclysmically speaking, that were interpreted as an act of God, so to speak, and the general proletariat or common citizens. And beyond that idea, at the very end, he's talking about the psychology of knowing thyself. And to hear that phrase, I've mentioned it multiple times. It has come up as not just a theme, but a really strong motif in the message that's trying to be conveyed from the mentors, indirect mentors that I've encountered. And the take-home idea that in order to know thyself, then you can truly master yourself and master the world around you. And anyone that hears that, they might hear that as like as a pastime, or as a hobby, or as a notion to entertain for some people, right? That doesn't really apply to me, or I'm not really that interested, as if it is merely an activity of enjoyment to pursue. Hence the comparison to a hobby. But if you look at it on the flip side, and this is what Tsarion was pointing out at the very end, when he was talking about the priest class and how they, what if you come to understand, and this is true, what if you come to understand that this group of people has a better understanding of your psychology than you do? First of all, what's the implication of that, generally speaking, and then what is the implication of that, literally speaking? So generally is anyone that understands someone else better than that person could, hence the general, could come to make decisions, take actions that affect those other people without them knowing it. And here's the literal: they do take actions, and the problem being that it is not in the best interest of those people. So in other words, if there's a group, this comes back to the occulted mystery schools, right? And religion is just one dominant faction of this that we see playing out. It may be the most apparent occulted faction, so to speak. I've mentioned the other forms of control being the belief in authority vis-a-vis government, the belief in money, and then religion, as we mentioned. And that's one where it's already kind of mystical in nature, but as long as it's part of my religion, is what people say, then it all makes sense, and everyone else's doesn't make sense. But what if what's really happening is there this group of people not only know something, they ordain themselves as the priest class, right? You go to church or you go to temple or mosque or wherever, and there's a person giving the speech or the sermon that is very blatantly acting as the intermediary in terms of delivering the speech, but they have also positioned themselves as literally a level above the other people because they have this divine understanding, which is all horseshit, right? So they've put themselves at that level in your eyes, and this ties into the inferiority, superiority complex that Tsarion talks about in this interview. But they've also literally, metaphorically put themselves up. They've literally put themselves above you in how they have gathered and garnered information. In this case, we're talking about psychology, not just of how people work, but how you work. And they are not sharing all of that. It's up to you, buyer beware. It's up to you to discern this. Just so when someone says, oh, that's just, know thyself, that's for those that want to know that. For anyone that fundamentally doesn't understand what's at stake, they're missing the bigger picture here, because what's at stake is ultimately the control and manipulation of those people through psychology. Okay, so think about that for a moment. We're not going to get too far down the rabbit hole. I just want to throw this big idea out there to reframe why the idea of know thyself is so important. It's not just he's into this or she's into this way of life, and so they're going to go learn and research. It's like, no, that's why we're all here. We're all here to better know ourselves in this co-creative, bio-spiritual, regenerative existence here on planet Earth. And those that don't know themselves, don't know thyself, will be, have been, and will continue to be, are, have been, and will continue to be manipulated by those that do understand psychology. And we have to come to terms with the majority of those that better understand it are not taking actions that are in alignment with the betterment of those that do not understand it. Okay? In other words, control. In other words, slavery. So in order to free oneself, one must know thyself. And I believe I'll leave it at that.